Well, my name is Volker Taube. As Tofino said, I'm the director of the EFTA Statistical Office. We are sited in Luxembourg. And I have the pleasure to tell you a little bit about the EFTA Statistical Office, what we are doing, especially also, of course, in the context of the EEA agreement, where statistics is mentioned as a flanking and horizontal policy. But let me first start off, and it's the 30th anniversary, in fact, of the EFTA Statistical Office this year. I wish it would have been my 30th anniversary, but okay, that's something. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about the EFTA Statistical Office in Luxembourg, what are our main tasks, main fields of activity, etc. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the European statistical system. This is, of course, our major playground, so to say. Then incorporation of statistical legislation into the EEA agreement, how we deal with that, how it is prepared, how it happens. What we do also, inclusion monitoring. This refers to obligations defined in the EEA agreement for the EFTA member states, as the EEA EFTA member states, as well as the other EEA states, that means the EU member countries. I will tell you a little bit about the European Statistical Training Program, which is also an activity where the EFTA countries cooperate with the EU member states. And finally, just a few words on what we call statistical technical cooperation with third countries, which is actually a kind of institution building. So with that, I go further. It works, yes. So this is just the entrance of the building where we are in Luxembourg. And it's not all EFTA Statistical Office, of course, this is Eurostat. So we are in a kind of very special situation. We are very close to the European Commission, so we're sitting actually in the same building, and we have day-to-day contact with our colleagues from the European Commission, from Eurostat. So what about the EFTA Statistical Office? It has been founded in 1991, for those of you who can calculate 30 years back. 1991. In 94, well, the three EEA member states, the EFTA member states, joined the European Statistical System, which consists of the EU member states and the EFTA member states. The European Statistical System is a kind of platform where legislation is provided, discussed already between EU member states and Eurostat, and of course also with the participation of the EFTA member states. But I will say also a little bit more about the European Statistical System later on. Well, the ultimate objective is still the promotion of the full inclusion of the EFTA member states into the European statistical system. This is also provided through Protocol 30 of the EEA agreement. Well, just to mention it, another important milestone in this context as concerns the European statistical system was the establishment of the Swiss-EU bilateral agreement in 2006, which made also Switzerland a part of the European statistical system. Okay, but back to the ESS. Well, the ESS is the partnership between all the European member states, the EU member states, Eurostat, and the EFTA member states. The EFTA Statistical Office acts like a kind of liaison, a broker between the EFTA member states and Eurostat and sometimes the EU member states. That means for certain communications, we are there. Well, we provide also assistance to our member states as concerns legal matters, but we are also there for organizational reasons as concerns participation in working groups, for example, that are mainly there to provide or prepare already legal acts that will then be later on presented in the ESSC, the European Statistical System Committee, which is the reunion of the ESS 3 times a year. So how about the incorporation of statistical legislation into the EEA agreement? That's, of course, one of our key tasks. So usually we're supposed to monitor what's coming up as legal acts. So we check regularly in the official journal as well as our Brussels colleague do. And as soon as we see that an act has been announced as being is published in the official journal, that means it becomes active, it becomes valid legislation, then we start actually. That means we send out forms to our member states, to the experts. We contact the experts in the National Statistical Institutes, ask them about their opinion on the legal act. So we check for, are there any provisions that we need to take into account before we then turn to our colleagues in Brussels that will then go to the joint committee in order to prepare the legislation for the Statistical Act there. By the way, statistics is dealt with in subcommittee 4. So, well, we have mainly the two stages, the identification, as I already mentioned, through official journal. We do that together with our Brussels colleagues. And then the incorporation, which is, of course, the part that is happening then later on in Brussels with the joint committee. I already mentioned shortly, well, the legal provisions in the EEA agreement. This is mainly Protocol 30 that mentions that statistics is a horizontal and flanking policy. And we have the Annex 21. The Annex 21 contains mainly all the legal acts in statistics that have been decided upon and that are valid. So, what we're going to do apart also from preparing legislation, being in contact with the experts in the EFTA member states and discussing with them issues, we provide, of course, also support to our member states as concerns, let's say, discussion. We are kind of counterpart or sparring partner for them to discuss also what are the challenges that come with the legal act in a certain statistical domain. We also check, as I said before, on the obligations that come from the EEA agreement, namely, that is to deliver data from the EFTA statistical offices to Eurostat for the inclusion into Eurostat's database and the publication therein. And on the other side, the obligation from Eurostat to publish data from EFTA member states in publications that they issue. And that means on the same footing as they do it for EU member states. And we look regularly into that, so we prepare 2 reports on this yearly, where we check on, well, there are many different publication formats. So we have certain formats where we go completely over it, so we look into everything. For other things, we have mainly just some samples there where we regularly check, is the data of our member states, is it used, is it published there, yes or no? If no, well, there are different reasons. Sometimes EFTA member states haven't delivered. Then we get in touch with our member states and discuss with them, why is this the case? Sometimes it's been omitted by Eurostat. Then we say, of course, well, this should be included, and this is what we then mention and discuss with them. And usually Eurostat does that also, so it's quite often just by coincidence, by accident, or whatever, that it got forgotten. And well, we present this report also twice a year to Eurostat, to the directors of Eurostat, in order to discuss with them how can this be improved, what are the problems encountered, etc. This is the inclusion monitoring. Then what I mentioned already at the start, we also active in what we call the European Statistical Training Program. So that means all the EU member states as well as the EFTA member states set up training courses for the staff of the statistical offices. So this is like, this goes across all different domains in statistical production. Could be national accounts, it can be trade statistics, can be everything. Use of GIS, global geographical information system data for registers, all kind of things that we do, and we provide training for that. And the EFTA member states also provide courses, set up courses together with us also. So we organize this, we pick out the topics for these training programs, and we organize the courses. We make sure that they appear also in the catalog of the ESTP. Yeah, so we finance also the provision of these courses with the member states. Well, as you can see here, I mean that this we have provided already a total of 52 SDP courses over the years since we are starting to do that. And well, the participation is usually free for all the staff members in the ESS. Then just finally, as I said, a few words about what we call statistical technical cooperation with third countries. While outside of the ESS, we have, of course, a lot of countries that are also producing statistics. The idea here is that we help those countries to modernize their statistical production systems. That can have, that might have or includes different facets. That on one side, this refers to organizational aspects of the offices, but it also goes quite into detail into certain domains, statistical production fields. So what we're going to do usually is we're going to set up expert missions. We call these things global assessments. So we go together with our colleagues from Eurostat and other international partner organizations, mainly United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. We go with these people together into the country. We meet with the management and the representatives of the different production areas in statistics and discuss with them their work. The reference for all of that, for example, for the organizational aspects, is what we call the European Statistics Code of Practice. This is a reference. These are like 16 principles of how official statistics should be produced, how official the National Statistical Institutes should be organized. Certain principles like, for example, the appointment of the director should be independent from political influence. This is, for example, very important. But other organizational principles are also in there, for example, as concerns quality standards. So we look at all these things when we go into these other countries, and then we finally write up what we call a global assessment report, and these reports are also published on the website. So if you go, for example, to the EFTA website and you choose the tab statistics, you will find also publications there. You find all these global assessment, peer reviews, and sector review reports that we write up when we go into the countries and check on their statistical systems and their production systems. So this is what we do in the field of statistical technical cooperation. You can see that from 2003 to 2020, we have spent in total approximately 5 million euros. The largest group that we have is what we call the ECA countries, this group here. This is Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and Caucasus. I should mention that actually the ENP East is contained therein already. So this is a kind of double mentioning. However, we thought it might be also useful to see what we only spent on the ENP East, because ENP means enabling neighborhood policy. These are the programs that come from the Commission. So they have ENP East and ENP South, where, well, ENP East are the Eastern European countries, ENP South are mainly the Northern African countries and Near East. So, and just to show also, well, these are the programs that the Commission has and how much we spent on these programs. Western Balkans, which had been also partially, or some of them had been in this group and received funding, and they became member states of the EU, of course, later on. So that was, of course, also quite good for us. We established already links very early there in the cooperation with these countries. Okay, and I think with this, I'm done. I'm through. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Volker. Yes, there are definitely questions. I'll take the first one from the chat, and I think the floor has some questions. How often does it happen that EEA EFTA states are forgotten in Eurostat reports?
I guess in publications this is meant. Well, it happens from time to time, but as I said, there are different reasons for not being there. Usually the data appears once it is in the database, so it is really rarely the case that they really got forgotten. And as I mentioned already before also, if it gets forgotten, we point it out. So usually Eurostat takes immediately steps in order to prevent that this happens the next time.
Okay, good that you're at least cohabiting, so communication should be easy.
Thank you, and thank you for a great presentation. My name is August. I'm from the ECD division in the Secretariat. And I was wondering, does ESO participate in how one calculates emissions, output gaps, fiscal deficits, and in determining how this is done? And if so, what is your role in this?
Well, I mean, we are not doing statistics ourselves. That means very little. We have a small publication format, so we're issuing 2 small publications on chosen topics over the year. That can be waste production in the EEA or something. We mainly did that in order to highlight also analytically the data from the EFTA states, which is, I should mention, most of the time published in Eurostat's publication, but rarely treated in the analytical text. But this is also what happens to other EU member states, because when you do analytical text, this is of course mainly about the special countries, or somehow they appear to be special, or the large countries that make an impact in anything, you know. So quite often smaller countries and a lot of EU countries are, it is just the same, they are not mentioned in the analytical text. In order to prevent that, we are doing like 2 small publications per year where we highlight this data. So, but apart from that, we are not producing statistics. You know, well, we just, we provide, of course, sometimes some extracts from databases if we are asked to do so, for example, permanent representation, etc., you know. But apart from that, we are not producing statistics. What you said would be probably part more of, I don't know, it sounded to me like something from either national accounts or balance of payments or kind of information that is there in the database in Eurostat. When you look at the Eurostat website, you find the database there, and it is, I think, quite nicely also organized by topics. You can go through there, and it's, in principle, everything is there in statistics.
Okay, and here's another question. Are there sometimes strong opinions in the EEA EFTA states about Commission proposals for statistic legislation?
Well, yes, we have sometimes, of course, discussions ongoing there, and we have also sometimes differing opinions on certain things. I mean, it always depends on, first of all, we have, of course, the possibility already way before it becomes a valid legislation, well, to discuss this with the colleagues. You know, we are in the working groups, we have the experts from the EFTA member states participate with the EU member states, the experts, in the working groups. And there, all these things are discussed. And this is usually already a good platform in order to tackle whatever problems are there. In case something can't be really resolved or whatever, there's still always the option of, well, either saying, well, we will deliver that later, you know, or even sometimes to go for an exemption. But that is all, that has also to be decided in a joint committee together with the EU then, you know, where exemptions are granted or not. But in principle, I would say this goes quite well. So the cooperation is really, I would say, a very good example that we are very cooperative with the EU and the EFTA member states.
Okay, thank you, Volker Taube. I think we have to break now.